All right, everyone, welcome back to Garza, Gaitan, and the game. And what a week when it comes to the game of politics. And what we're going to do here in this podcast is we're going to go play by play with analysis here with Daniel Garza and myself on so many topics that are not just important to our nation, important to our communities, things going on around the globe and here at home. I'm coming this time from Honduras, Cantaranas, my dad's small town out here, my uncle's finca. It's always great to be back home. Daniel, you're someone who knows what it is to consistently kind of go back home to Mexico, where you have a lot of family. You have
Excuse me, sir. My home is America. Thank you very much.
Be home away from home.
That's right. That's right.
Home away from home.
I do enjoy going back to Garza Gonzalez every once in a while and taking some time off. And so it's a different world, Wadi, and it's therapeutic, really.
Yeah, it really is. And it also, I think, gives us an opportunity not only to appreciate where our parents come from, our background comes from, really appreciate that, and also appreciate here in the United States, the opportunity that we are afforded in this country. So it's really, I think, always a good opportunity to be able to go back to the motherland, as they call it. But Daniel, a lot going on right now here. Look, and when it talks about the opportunities that this country has afforded us, it's important to look at the elections that impact those who are going to be lawmakers. And I'm talking about in New York. Today, we're going to be looking at the primary win on the Democratic side that Mamdami, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but the win that he came out over Cuomo. We're also going to be looking at the SCOTUS ruling around birthright citizenship. It's really nuanced on what they said. We're going to get into that. And then we're going to get a little bit onto the fact that this weekend, the one big, beautiful bill, the extension of the Trump tax cuts, what this means for middle-class families and what Republicans have to do after even this bill is passed the Senate, goes back to the House, and makes it to the president's desk. So a lot to uncover. But Daniel, I want to start about what we saw in New York. This was a mayor's race in New York City that many people thought that Andrew Cuomo, the previous governor of New York City, someone who has high name ID, someone who kind of historically, not necessarily a moderate, but someone just on the left side of the spectrum within the Democrat Party, but not an extremist. However, he did not win the primary. He lost to the socialist of the Democrat Party, Mamdami. Again, excuse me if I'm mispronouncing the name, but he won that primary. He has been very vocal about how he believes he wants to increase taxes for corporations, how he wants to increase taxes for high-earning Americans. He's talked about how he wants to make sure that everything is free. And while that might sound nice, but we all know that things cannot be free. They come with a cost to the taxpayer. So, Daniel, I really want to get your initial reaction on where this is headed for Democrats in New York, that they have now elected a socialist or nominated a socialist within their party for this upcoming election in New York.
Yeah, Wadi, we talk about the game, but I think they're playing a dangerous game in New York. The few voters that come out during the primaries on the Democrat side have gone with Zoran Mamdani. I mean, everything I know about the man is that he's an anti-Semitic Marxist. He's been campaigning on a platform with race-based policies even. He's sold out on woke. And that's what I mean about they're playing a dangerous game. When the Democrats took a hit this past election, they were going to veer away from woke politics, and this guy is embracing it, right? He's all about Marxism, socialism, and wokeism. He's a socialist who hates capitalism. I mean, he repeats that often. In fact, I understand that the DOJ, Department of Justice, Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Harmeet Dillon, is threatening to investigate Zoran over his basically illegal racist proposal to tax white Americans more if he becomes New York City mayor. It's based on an immutable trait of being white, you will be taxed more. It's unbelievable, the discrimination that he's proposing. He plans to spend $65 million on childhood sex changes. He's okay with that. Anyone who really believes that globalized intifada is a legitimate call for Palestinian equality and equal rights is playing a dangerous game. And he's often repeated that line. and he was asked to defend it, and he couldn't. Basically, doubled down on it. And so, is there any American principle that this man likes? Is this really difficult to tell at this point? He's everything that is wrong, I think, with the Democrat Party. He's, like I said, he's doubling down on each and every bad extremist policy that is not a good look for Democrats nationwide. I mean, this guy could win mayor in New York, and you could lose the rest of the country. Mm-hmm. That's how radical this man is. AOC, by the way, is associating her brand to this man. And I think she's going to sink her standing and distance moderates away from her. And it's going to come back to haunt her if she does run for president of the United States. Like, I guess a lot of people are saying she's like #1 in the polls right now. And another thing, and the last thing I'll say to this is that, yeah, she may win. This Mamdami may win and excite the Latinx crowd, all 2% of them, but it's going to turn off Latinos. The extremism here and what they see, and you know, with these kind of proposals, and you know, with leaders from Latin America, is a big turnoff to Latinos.
What do you say about the issue of immigration on this topic? I think, you know, campaigns can be very interesting to study those pivotal moments. One of those moments that I think many people are pointing to in these last 2 weeks was when he was at a incident where ICE was arresting an individual. I don't know the details of if he had a deportation order or what it was, but ICE was, in other words, just essentially doing their business, doing their work. And he tried to stop the arrest, and this really garnered him a lot of attention. The left, obviously, we saw in LA with the riots and the protests, they're making this a center issue many times in a way that even Hispanics are saying, we're not with you on this topic, burning cars, you know, rioting, destroying property. What type of shift did this create, and what kind of conversation or what role did immigration play in this? Do you think the fact that is the left so hung up on this issue and on these stunts, do you think that maybe put them over the top, or is this just in New York, the left is just saying we want a socialist? Is it all of the above, or is it this specific?
Well, again, Wadi, this is a calculation that is being made by some in the Democrat Party that if you're going to come and advocate on behalf of criminal immigrants who are getting deported, you're going to win over the sympathies of white liberal women, the Latinx crowd that I was talking about, and of course the immigrant community, which doesn't vote, by the way. But the working class folks, the ones who are victimized by these people, who are burglarized, who are raped, who are killed, injured, assaulted, carjacked, by exactly these folks that ICE is getting rid of. They're thrilled, with the deportation of the criminal element that is happening right now. So it's Latino voters who I think have a different feel or sentiment as to what ICE is doing than maybe Latinx and white liberal, females. They already have them. So I don't think they're winning over any converts by advocating on behalf of criminal immigrants, to be honest with you. And so, but that's just my take. That's a bet that the Democrat Party is doing. And Mamdani, he got the primary win based on garnering the sympathies of exactly those constituencies. Good luck to you.
Yeah, what I also haven't seen is many Democrats coming out and expressing disappointment that this is the direction that the party went. And if anything, I saw one of Bill Clinton's tweet where he was applauding the nomination of Zoran. I think this is where Democrats fail and their calculations are completely off. Yep. In LA, Democrats could have been the one to have completely come out against the riots, the destruction of property. They could have said, hey, we support the protest. We support, sort of coming out against certain topics. But the moment people crossed the line, they could have come out. It was just really the senator from Pennsylvania who stood up and said, when our party loses the moral clarity, we've really lost the constituency. The same thing in New York. I think more Democrats could have come out and said, this socialist, this extreme left does not represent our party. This is not the direction.
By the way, what
we go in.
Who convinced these people that blocking major freeways and overpasses and folks who are on their way to work is a productive way of protest? Is going to garner you the sympathies of folks who maybe don't care about these issues. it's exactly the opposite reaction.
Mm-hmm.
You frustrate the heck out of people. They hate you forever because you now made them late to their work.
Mm-hmm.
You've cost them a lot of money. So it's like I don't know who's persuading these folks, with these kind of tactics. But yeah, I think people are sick of it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's not going to work on the long run. Daniel, switching over to another topic that is front and center this week, just because of the announcement, SCOTUS has come out on a ruling, and it's actually kind of beyond birthright citizenship specifically, and it's more on the, I believe one way of putting it is on the a national injunction. We can get a little bit deeper on the details, which I know you'll do here, but I just want to get your reading of what the meaning of the SCOTUS ruling is and the impact that it might have.
Yeah, the first one was that like as you mentioned, the Supreme Court has struck down nationwide injunctions by these runaway district judges, right? Who were, it's like everything, Wadi. Once you abuse something, it's going to get taken away, and they abused their power. And the kind of power that they had was to one person, activist judge gets to decide for an entire country, what laws they'll live under, without being elected, but they can overturn an executive's decision, and it's the law of the land. So what happened here is that it restricts judicial activism to the region of the judge. So it was based on the case of birthright citizenship, but the Supreme Court did not decide on birthright citizenship. It just decided that these district judges are now going to be restricted, again, to the region of the judge. They abused their power, like I said, and they once had and showed themselves to be partisan and undisciplined. And look, what also struck me about this case that was handed down, which is, I think, monumental, and a big win for Donald Trump, by the way, is that, like, for example, Justice Amy Coney Barrett got really direct with Ketanji Brown, Justice Ketanji Brown, who basically was trafficking in theatrics. She embellished, the consequences of said decision, that this would be the end of rule of law. And so Amy said, Justice Barrett, let me say it with respect, a quote for the ages. She said, "We observe only this. Justice Jackson decries an imperial executive while embracing an imperial judiciary." That's a slap in the face, right? That's like putting
She didn't hold back.
No, she didn't hold back at all, and it kind of got so personal. Yeah, and so and it's strongly worded, takedown of Ketanji Brown, who doesn't have any reservations at imposing her will as a judge, but wants to restrict an executive who's been elected by a majority of Americans from imposing their will. So it basically, she's saying you're a hypocrite, is the bottom line. And the other thing I'll say is that the other decision was that it also upheld age verification in Texas. And that's to protect minors from exposure to pornography, that you will have to take these extra steps to say you are, to prove you're as old as you need to be, right? And so I think that was important. I believe in that. We need to protect, young minds from, that kind of corruption. And anyways, I think we need to protect society. And it's a minor step.
Yeah, but a very important one. It's something that I know in Florida as well was moved, I believe, through the legislature. It wasn't an executive action from the governor. It was moved through the legislator, and it's something that it's a protection of minors, and it's something I think we could all agree on, that the verification on this is important. Like you said, it has societal impacts. Everyone has access to a device now at a younger age. How do we make sure that the content that they're consuming, it's per se appropriate, or there are guardrails when it is inappropriate? Daniel, this is something that I think obviously on the left, people are not going to be happy with when it comes, going back to the SCOTUS ruling, when it comes to the injunction on the national side. The reality is that they're also facing or paying the sins of things that they did. And what I mean by that is there wasn't this outcry when President Obama, if you can remember, when the Senate won its majority after his second term, saying that I can rule by the pen, right? Something that was somewhat unprecedented back when he said this, when he talked about that he will begin to just take executive actions over executive actions. There wasn't this outcry from the left on what a president is doing, but now there's an outcry when President Trump is doing it, and vice versa.
Yeah, I will say, to be fair, that nobody has taken executive actions to the level that Donald Trump has, right? It is extraordinary amount of executive actions that were issued during these first 100 days, and it overwhelmed Democrats to the point where, of course, their only recourse was to engage judges and to shop for judges, right? And so much so that I think they overdid it. They leaned past their skis on this one, and they got slapped on the wrist by the Supreme Court of the United States.
Yep.
And because of that, as a result, these district judges have now been restrained. So, you're right, it's going to work both ways.
Exactly.
If a Democrat becomes president, it'll also
the Democrats in the future can say, well, I want to break the record of, I believe, 140 or 114 executive actions, and then there's going to be limits possibly on what conservatives can do through conservative judges. So my point is, I think both sides have to look back at history and say, okay, what are the steps that we're supporting and allowing? Because the one who kind of started a little bit is Obama when it comes to, he says, you know what, I'm going to take things. I have a phone and a pen where I can do a lot of these items. So it's a little bit of somewhat of a starting point in recent history. Folks just, I think on both sides, need to be aware of these items because they do have per se these consequences.
It does empower the executive. I will agree to that in the sense that, now they are a bit less restrained by judicial blocks.
Yeah, very much so. Daniel, one of the other key things going on right now in the game is that middle class tax cuts will expire at the end of this year if they're not extended. It passed originally the House. The Senate is about 24 to 48 hours away from voting on their version, which has minor amendments and adjustments. It'll then probably make it over to the House and then to the president's desk. Assuming all these steps happen in the next, again, everything from 48 hours to the next 3 days, making it to the president's desk. I want to hear from you. What does this mean, one, on the policy side, but then what does this also mean on the political side? The president, one of his main campaigning points was the economy, saying that he was going to take things in a completely different direction than the Biden administration. So what does this bill, the passage of this bill, mean not only just for policy, the impact on people, but on the political landscape?
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to speak to a little bit more on the politics side, and maybe you can, take on a little bit on the policy side. But look, I think, organizations like the one I run, the Leave It Initiative, they pointed to policy champions and we made commitments that these are the folks that are going to get us, achievements, wins in Congress on bills exactly like this, right? That would continue the tax reductions that we benefited from, that will continue to ramp up energy production, that will strengthen the border. One of the things buried in this bill is $1.25 billion in funding to hire 250 immigration judges and their staff, right? And so, extra judges, Wadi, is welcome news.
Key component.
Yeah, absolutely. And according to some estimates, we need 1,000, right? But let's go. 250 would of course assure that the system is not overwhelmed, right? When there's spikes, when there's a rush at the border, it's stuff like that is buried within the bill. These kind of measures is again what we were pointing to as the direction that we needed to go in. The change that we needed. For this bill not to pass would be a disaster for Republicans. It not only would be a disaster economically, because it would, of course, send us backwards, and it would basically trigger the highest tax increase in the history of the United States. But it would, of course, be a massive failure for all Republicans. And I think there would be a massive backlash in the midterms to begin with. And I don't know if you can recover in time for the next general election of the presidency and some Senate races that are going to be critical because, obviously we live in a 50-50 dynamic right now in both the House and the Senate. And so a lot is at stake on this bill. I can't understate how massive I think the stakes are here for the Republican Party, but also for Democrats. The Democrats are betting big that they will oppose this bill all the way to the very end. And if it comes out, that they are, the winners on this thing, I think the only thing that is left for Republicans to say is that, we couldn't get our bill through because, the Democrats were obstructionists. They're the ones that, created your tax hike, and whatever. But of course, the Democrats will turn that and say that, this is just it was a bad bill. We weren't going to be a part of it. And somehow, they'll spin it, even though they're desperate for tax increases.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see how this plays out. And I think I know how it will. I mean, let's be honest. August recess is around the corner. Folks want to go back home and they want to campaign on something. People, citizens, voters, they want accountability. They want results. They want people to deliver on solutions. And when you come back, and if you're a Democrat, what can you say? You've opposed a wide range of proposals, everything on the immigration side related to border security, everything related to the economy on the one big, beautiful bill.
Yeah, they're against it all.
They've been against it all. They haven't provided productive solutions to the matter because they could have come alongside specifically on the tax cuts.
They refuse to give Donald Trump a win, even if it means that they would send the American economy into a tailspin. In fact, they probably welcome it, and which should curdle the blood and anger you to no end. But that's exactly the game they're playing.
Yeah. And I think Republicans are going to be the complete opposite. They're going to be able to go back home and show what they delivered on. They're going to be able to show what they worked on and how they worked with the Senate as well. The opportunities they provided for Democrats to come alongside them, the opportunities they had for an amendment process to provide something productive, but the Democrats refused. This is a win for Republicans who had slim majorities on both sides. This is something that's required them to work as a party. Many people sometimes criticize Republicans because within the party, there's a little bit more of a challenge, right? When it comes to the speaker races, Republicans are allowed to voice their opinion. It isn't just one sort of this rule and this person anointed as the next leader.
That's a good point. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Waddy. And look, and we can talk politics all day long and how this would, be consequential to that. But in the end, what Elon Musk exposed was the massive, massive waste, fraud, and abuse of the federal government spending. Why would we feed more money to the federal government to continue that waste, fraud, and abuse that binge they were on? Again, I think it was every American. I think threw their coffee across the room when they found out that we were paying for billions of dollars for pottery classes in Morocco or whatever the heck it was, right? It was just unbelievable. So why would we continue to fund this kind of crap? It's just beyond me.
Yeah, very much so. I think these next few days, there's going to be an opportunity for a victory lap, not just for Republicans and the president, but for taxpayers who are going to be happy about this. And I think the next step is going to be looking at legislation like the Rescissions Act, legislation like the DOGE Act, which are going to try to tackle wasteful spending, tackle the deficit to make sure, because there's still a lot of issues. This does not mean that Congress goes home and they're done completely for July and they're done for the rest of the year. There's still a lot of work ahead, which means here at Garza Gaitan and the Game, we will be analyzing all of these bills moving through Congress, all the political landscape. We're going to continue to watch the New York mayor's race to see how it unfolds. I think Republicans are going to have a little bit more of a chance than they typically would in this big race.
Right.
But Daniel, thank you again for your analysis on that. We encourage our audience to stay connected. We're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, so make sure to stay connected. But until next time, everyone have a good one.